Nagbabalik ang SMNI Presidential Debate 2022. And this is our third and final round. And at this round, we'll have the panelists asking questions again from our candidates. And we'll be following the same format where we'll have 90 seconds for each candidate to answer a panelist question. And then they'll have 60 seconds for each candidate to react to the other candidate's answer. And then 30 seconds for rebuttal. And our first question will be coming from UP Professor Dr. Clarita Carlos.
Thank you, Karen. Okay, again, my question will be on defense and security. It's well known that Russia has indicated many times that it wants to train and exercise with our Philippine military. As a matter of fact, for the first time, it appointed a defense attaché at the Russian embassy here in Manila. This will, of course, require a status of forces agreement like what we have with the US and Australia. As our future chief executive, would you agree to a status of forces agreement with Russia?
This question will be addressed to Secretary Gonzales first, and then we're doing a round robin as we have throughout the night. So we'll have Secretary Gonzales, Senator Marcos, Secretary Abella, and then Caliotti.
I would appreciate if we have preliminary talks first, because in the first place, the system familiar to our armed forces is American. It's very, very difficult to immediately change systems. So it doesn't mean that we will not be open to something friendly with the Russians.
Senator Marcos?
Yeah, may I follow through that
Of course.
remark? But you know, remember, we have in fact committed to the ASEAN political security community, which is part of the troika of economic community and the social cultural community. So that means eventually in the ASEAN, you will really have to deal with different doctrines of ASEAN 10. So, by the way, Russia is only first. I understand that China also wants to train with us. Vietnam wants to train with us, and Japan. I'm sure all these countries will have different doctrines. So should we not open ourselves up to this eventuality rather than be hostage to American doctrine?
Well, I think we can begin by sending our military to train in Russia in the beginning, so that we can begin to adjust to these changing times. But until we have that kind of, it's very difficult to train when your systems do not match. I know that. So we begin with sending officers for training in Russia.
Thank you.
Thank you. Senator Marcos.
Well, yes, we would have to look into what the status of forces agreement actually entails to our two countries between Russia and the Philippines, for the simple reason that it is an entirely novel concept for our two countries together. However, again, if we can see that there's an advantage to the Philippines for that, but you see, this is part of the effort that you, Professor, mentioned, that the superpowers are carving out against their spheres of influence. And in the same way, as I spoke to you about the last question that concerned that, I do not think the spheres of influence model of the Cold War still applies. So we should be very wary of that. As a practical matter, if we are to train with all of those countries, then we could have a real logistical problem in our military, because the training is usually the beginnings of their hopefully supplying or hopefully for the donor country, supplying us with military equipment. And so, yes, it is good perhaps that we see what the different doctrine that I'm talking doctrine and military doctrines are. But I think we still have to decide at some point, and what they, as the engineers call it, we have to freeze the design of our military and say we have decided to go with these pieces of equipment and with this military doctrine. That's with those who we have
Senator
trained with.
Marcos, time's up.
Yeah, as an adjunct to your remarks, shouldn't we also abolish the AFP as it is configured presently? Because, that was designed during the American occupation. Because we have new security interests, and therefore the doctrinal framework will also follow through. If you abolish the AFP, and as you have indicated, as four of you have indicated earlier, that it is really the sea which needs to be protected. And yet, the bulk of your AFP consists of the army, which is running after insurgency, which is not its mandate, by the way. So shouldn't you be abolishing the AFP and putting a little bit more manpower and equipment on the Marines and the Navy,
Well,
as you have articulated earlier?
That is a question for our military planners and thinkers as to how which branch of the military should be beefed up, should be strengthened.
But you will be the
however-
potential commander-in-chief of the Republic. So
Precisely.
that
So-
decision will really be on your desk,
Yes,
not
it
on
will.
the AFP.
Yes, it will. And we will look at the situation at the time that these are being proposed. But again, we have to go back to the very practical matter of how our military operates. I cannot see how the Philippines will continue to exist if we do not have the AFP. And therefore, the idea of abolishing the AFP might be a logical conclusion, but it is not a practical one.
Yeah, on a personal note, I wrote a paper on abolishing the AFP, and I'm sure I got so many enemies. But yes, if you're interested to read that paper, I can share it with you.
Yes, please, ma'am. I would be very, very interested.
Yes. As a reaction, Secretary Gonzalez?
Yeah, I think abolition is a very extreme measure. And I don't think it's practical. What probably is important is the matter of doctrine. There are certain hints in our doctrine that we follow to be part of the defense system of the United States. I think we should examine this very carefully. I think we should evolve our own doctrine for our own defense. So that to me is important. And then the other matter, abolition maybe though, but there is a provision in our constitution that will allow us to change the character of our armed forces to be a citizens' army. That probably can be considered.
Thank you, Secretary
Yeah,
Gonzalez.
but and maybe if I, backtrack a little bit, maybe abolition should not be the word. The word really in my paper is to render the AFP obsolescent. Meaning, you change the configuration of the AFP because, to repeat, that was in fact designed during the American occupation, and I don't think it addresses our present security challenges.
Secretary Abella?
Yes, I believe we need to calibrate our responses, especially with this new development, especially because our capabilities are asymmetrical. We're not on at par with them. So even in terms of capability and skills. On the other hand, we need to continue to develop our own internal capabilities so that we can maintain our independent foreign policy. And also, it's in agreement. I do agree that much of our military is land-based and should be. And at this stage, we should perhaps develop more naval capabilities.
Galion.
Katulad ng aking sinasabi kanina, ako yung nag-i-stick doon sa aking tindig na dapat ay maging independent tayo. At huwag tayong, lalo na sa usapin ng military, na parang preparation for war, ay huwag na tayong makisangkot dyan. Malayo, hindi na natin kaya makipagsabayan sa kanila, malayo na tayo. At isa pa, yung gera ay wala tayong mapapala dyan. Ang makikinabang lang dyan ay mga korporasyon ng mga gumagawa ng bala at ng armas. Sila lang ang laging kumikita every time na magkakagera. Kaya sila yung laging nag-uudyok ng gera. Masang kung magkakaroon man ng gera, ang ating pagigigirahin ay yung problema nating kinakarap sa klima, na meron tayong climate emergency ngayon. Doon lang natin ayain ang iba't ibang bansa sa mundo na itong ating harapin, yung krisis sa klima at yung krisis sa kabuhayan ng buong mundo, yung kagutuman. At huwag yung parang pagpapalakas ng armas natin para sa paghandaan, ang pakikipaggera sa iba. Talo tayo dyan, walang nananalo dyan. Kundi ang nanalo dyan, ulitin ko, yung mga korporasyon ng mga gumagawa ng bala at armas. Sila ang masaya dyan. Tayong mamayang sa mundo ay malungkot dahil giba, wasak ang ating ekonomiya at kabuhayan.
Thank you, Kalodi. Professor Carlos, I can see you looking at me. Is there any follow-up question?
Well, gusto kong tanungin si Calyodi kung hinila ng Amerika ang paa natin dahil in-invoke niya ang Mutual Defense Treaty dahil hindi mo pa siya in-scuttle. Ano magiging reaction mo bilang Commander-in-Chief?
Immediately nga, kapag ako'y magiging gobyerno, kinabukasan, yun ang aking magiging kautusan na dapat i-revoke yung Mutual Defense Treaty, lahat yan, pati yung LCAC, BFA, dahil ang hirap nating magdesisyon kung parang merong baril na nakatutok sa ating ulo. Kinakailangan, pati yung mga agreement natin sa China, putulin natin yan. At ang mas ipalaganap natin, makiisa tayo sa iba't ibang bansa na nananawagan ng kapayapaan sa mundo. At yung nananawagan ng paglaban sa klima. At yung panawagan ng buong mundo na nananawagan na labanan yung kagutuman at inekwalidad sa ating bansa. Dahil grabe na ang inekwalidad sa ating, hindi na sa bansa, sa buong mundo. Yun ang ating samahang mga bansang ganon. At hindi yung mga bansang naghahanda sa gera.
Yes, but if we look at realpolitik, the realities on the ground, what if the senators are not with you in abrogating all these treaty commitments?
Kung yung ating mga senador at congressman ay mga gerero din, utak gera, ay di gamitin natin yung provision sa ating konstitusyon na People's Initiative. Gamitin natin yun para nang sa ganun ay ipasa yung isang batas na magbibigay proteksyon sa kabuhayan ng ating mga mamayan at yung proteksyon sa krisis ng klima at pagtatakwil doon sa lumalaganap na gera na ang magtatamasa lamang naman ay yung mga korporasyon at mga kapitalista na namumuhunan diyan.
Salamat. Salamat.
Thank you, Kalodi. And we'll move on to the next question. Yes.
This is a follow-up question to Leody.
Well, very appropriate. You're the next panelist to ask a question anyway, Attorney Rolex.
This is a follow-up
Yes.
to the question of Professor Carlos. Wala pa pong naipasa na batas sa People's Initiative. Wala akong naalala. In fact, sa dead letter law.
Sasagutin ko.
Yes, Kalodi.
Sisimulan ko.
Okay.
Well, on that note,
There is
Attorney
always a
Rolex,
first time.
Yes.
My question is this. My turn. Ayon po sa COMELEC, mayroon ngayong 67 million registered voters. Ayon naman sa RA 7166, ang mga kandidato sa pagkapangulo ay maaari lamang gumastos ng 10 piso kada botante. Habang ang mga political parties naman ay may limit na 5 piso kada botante. Bago before mag-February 8 o ang opisyal na simula ng panahon ng pangkampanya, magkano na po ba ang iyong nagastos? At sino ang nagbigay ng pinakamalaking porsyento ng iyong pondong pangkampanya?
Okay. Very tough question. We're following a sequence here. Senator Marcos, you're the first to answer this question. And then we'll go around from Secretary Abella, Caliodi, and Secretary Gonzales.
Una-una ay hindi namin nililista ang mga donasyon at saka karamihan dyan in kind eh. Kagaya halimbawa, sasabihin ko sa inyo, mga karaban na ginagawa namin, ay kami ay iniimbita lamang ng mga organizer dyan. At hindi kami ang kaya pinagsasabi sabi namin, huwag niyong pahabain, o huwag niyong gagawin ito, o gawin na lang natin, magtanim tayo ng kahoy. Sinasabi lang gusto pa rin namin magkaraban. Hindi naman namin maipigil dahil walang hinihingi sa amin. Kaya wala kaming gastos doon. Yun sa siguro, yung nakikita, siyempre, so, marami tayong pinupuntahan. Sa awa ng Diyos, marami pa naman tayong kaibigan na handang tumulong na magpahiram ng kanilang mga eroplano, ng kanilang mga helicopter, at gratis at amore naman ang aming usapan diyan. Kaya hindi nga namin nililista dahil hindi naman kailangan pa na isama doon sa tinatawag na SOSE or Statement of yung gastos sa eleksyon. Yung magsisimula lang yan kung sa ano yung gastos noong February 8, mula noong February 8 hanggang sa pagdating ng halalan. Pagdating ng halalan ay lahat ng naging kandidato ay maglalabas ng SOSE at makikita ninyo kung sino donor, kung gaano kalaki ang binigay at yung listahan kung saan napunta yung pera nyo.
Any follow-up question?
Well, my follow-up question will be common to all.
Okay.
So I think
So I
Secretary
will go
Gonzales
through,
wanted
yeah.
to say something.
Any reaction?
I'm sorry, I missed
No,
that.
I think
Yeah.
Secretary Gonzales wants to say something.
Me?
Yes.
Sorry, did you want to react, Secretary Gonzales?
Hindi naman. Na-amuse lang ako. Kasi
Okay. So, in
kita-kita
the interest of
laki-laki
time,
na ginayos.
in the interest of time,
Okay.
we'll have...
Then I have a follow-up question because I thought he wanted to speak. Okay.
Okay.
My follow-up question is, simula noong February 8 or 7 days ago, magkano na po ba ang inyong nagastos? Balak mo bang limitahan ang inyong gastos after February 8 sa nakatakda sa RA 7166? Dideklara mo ba sa Statement of Contributions and Expenditures or SOSE ang tamang amount? Bakit o bakit hindi?
Natural na kailangan yun sa SOSE, magbubuo kami ng SOSE. Ngunit nga sa ngayon ay hindi namin magagawa dahil nagsimula pa lang. At hindi pa maliwanag kung saan gagastusin kung anumang pera ang naibigay sa amin o nahawakan namin o sa partido at saka sa kandidato. Kaya sa ngayon ay wala pa yung impormasyon na yan kaya hindi pa maibibigay. Yang SOSE na yan ay mabubuo lamang pagdating na ng halalan at maliwanag na kung ano ang nangyari sa nakaraang 3 buwan, kung saan nanggaling ang aming ginagastos at kung saan napunta yung perang yan. Kung magkano ang binigay ng bawat contributor, yan ang mga requirement ng SOSE. Kaya ilalabas natin lahat yan.
Well, Senator Marcos, as we speak, can you give us an estimate? Pwede mo ba kaming bigyan ng estimate kung magkano na po ang ginasto nyo as of today, sa ngayong araw?
No, I cannot because I'm not following it. Hindi ko sinusundan dahil unang-una, wala kaming accounting ng before February 8 na tsaka since February 8. Kaya that data is just not available. Hindi namin binubuo yan. Ang aming binabantayan ngayon, ang gastusin mula nung February 8.
Karen, is it in order for me to ask my colleague here to elaborate on that question? Because I'm a stupid person, so I don't know the details of this RA that he talked about.
Okay.
Okay.
Well, I think...
Yeah,
Sorry.
because when I investigated this and wrote a book on political parties and elections, Rolex, I noted that some people, because they don't want a money trail, a paper trail rather, will put the money in bayongs, and just give it to you, Rolex. Eto yung ano. So, diyan ba sa RA na sinasabi mo, yung ganyang mga pagbibigay ng salapi, hindi matitrace, di ba?
Well, bilang po yan sa umpisa ng campaign period, which started last February 8.
Wow,
Kung
but
hindi po
only a,
hindi bilang.
yeah, but only a stupid person will report na nakakuha ako ng milyon dyan sa Bayong, di ba? That's what I'm saying.
Well, I
By the
think
way,
there's a law. It's the requiring.
Karen, hindi ko inaapi to kasi estudyante ko to eh.
Professor ko eh. Kabukuhan na.
Okay, so that's the same question that we have. Are you going to react po, Calyoni? Yes.
Tansya ko, magkakahirapan talaga na magkaalaman o magkaaminan kung magkano talaga ang gagastusin ng mga politiko. Dahil gagawa nila ng paraan yan, kahit napakalaki ng ginastos, ay i-eksakto niya yan, gagawa ng paraan para pumasok doon sa kung ano lang yung allowed. No, pero huwag na tayo magbulahan dahil tingin ko ay sobra-sobra ang ginagastos ng mga politiko na sa bawat eleksyon. Kaya nga, ang aking mungkahi dyan para matigil yan, ay dapat ang gumagastos sa pagpapakilala ng politiko na tumatakbo ay gobyerno. Dahil gobyerno naman ang naghahanap ng tamang leader na pupwesto sa pamahalaan. Dapat ganun hindi na yung mga individual. Dahil pagka-individual, ang gagastos ay talagang ang ating eleksyon sa Pilipinas ay magiging eleksyon lamang ng mga bilyonaryo o kung hindi naman ay yung mga kandidato na sikat na susuportahan ng mga bilyonaryong korporasyon. Yun ang mangyayari. At yan ang nangyayari sa ating bansa ngayon. Kaya ngayon lamang nangyari na may Leody de Guzman na tumakbo bilang presidente mula sa halin ng mga manggagawa. Kasi hindi mangyayari ang totoong demokrasya kapag ka individual ang pinabagastos. Kasi talaga namang bubuhusan ng pondo at magkakaroon ng malaking gastusan sa eleksyon.
Thank you, Calyoni. And we'll go back to the question. That was a reaction from Calyoni. We'll go back to the same question from Attorney Suplico that is now addressed to Secretary Abella.
Right. Most of our expenses have been done by volunteers. So they give in kind, they give this. So wala talaga kaming numero. And if there's anything at all, it's really just, they give you t-shirts, they give you, hindi siya, kumbaga, at the end of the campaign period, there will be an accounting definitely. Pero most of it, wala kaming malalaking backer, wala kaming malaking makinarya, in fact. So basically, it's all volunteers. Thank you.
No more questions.
No reaction. Okay, Calyoni.
Imposible ako may pinakamalaking ginastos dito. Pero tiyak ako na wala pa doon sa kahit sa minimum. Hindi ko kayang ang 350,000 na billboard sa EDSA na isang buwan. Hindi ko kaya yan. Hindi ko kaya ang 800,000 na isang labas sa TV ad sa 15 seconds. Hindi ko kaya yan. At hindi ko rin kayang gumastos ng mga poster sa mga baybay daan. Hindi ko kaya yan. May kaya lang yan ay mga bilyonaryo at milyonaryo. At saka yung supporter ng mga big business sa ating bansa. At yan ay isang open secret naman sa ating eleksyon na laging yung mga malalaking negosyante ay nagpopondo doon sa mga sikat na kandidatong gusto nila ipananalo.
Thank you. And finally, Secretary Gonzales, same question.
Calyoni, hindi ka nag-iisa ha.
Tayo.
Pareho tayo. At kaya ako nagpapasalamat sa SMNI kasi binigyan tayo ng pagkakataon. Binigyan tayo ng pagkakataon na maipakita ang programa at ang uri ng pamumulitika na gusto nating ipakita sa ating mga mamamayan na hindi gagastos ng milyon-milyon. Alam naman natin, hindi pa nagsisimula ang kampanya, bilyon na ang naubos ng ibang mga kandidato. Tanggapin natin yan, huwag na natin ilihim. Totoo yan. Nag-intay kami ng February 8. Nag-iintay kami ng mga magagandang offer na makarating man lang sa sambayanan. Tama ang proposal ni Calyoni. We need a law on political parties. which also include, alam mo, malaking katipiran sa bayan kung ang gobyerno ang gagastos sa ating eleksyon. Tandaan natin, ang mga ibinibigay at ginagastos sa eleksyon, babawiin. Lugi ang mamamayan.
Thank you, Secretary Gonzales. I can see Professor Carlos raising her hand. Any follow-up questions, Professor?
Well, susog lang dun sa tinuran ni Bert Gonzales at saka ni Leody de Guzman, no? Actually, yung gusto niyong proposal that the government will pay for your radio, TV time, and your tarpaulins, etc. That can only happen when you shift our parliamentary system, where the political party becomes the pivot of our political life. Outside of that, talagang kailangan magkalkal ka ng sarili mong salapi. And you know the implication when you do that, diba? So let's shift our parliamentary system. Unfortunately, not one of my colleagues here, including myself, have asked about that because we were limited to 2 questions. So what can we do?
So we'll contribute more questions. There's also a limit here. Okay. We have a reaction from Secretary Gonzales.
Kung pakikinggan nyo naman po, kung iaalalahanin nyo yung aking beginning statement, yan po sinasabi ko. Ang sakit ng politika at pamumulitika dito sa atin, dapat tignan ng pagbabago, maybe charter change, so that we can think of the parliamentary system. Kung gusto natin ng autonomous regions, yan po ang nakita ko din. 10 taon ako naglingkod sa gobyerno. Ang nakasisira ng ating kinabukasan, ang pamumulitika natin.
Thank you. And we have a reaction from Senator Marcos.
Idadagdag ko lang sa that the professor said na dapat parliamentary system dahil pag parliamentary system, multi-party system, ang partido ang talagang namumuno at talagang nagpapatakbo ng halalan para sa kanyang mga kandidato. Idadagdag ko na rin doon, baka yung two-party system doon. Dahil pag two-party system tayo, partido talaga. Pag sinabi, nung dati LP, NP, may machinery sila. May talagang machinery. Sila ang gumagalaw at sila ang nagdadala sa kanilang mga kandidato. Kaya siguro, dapat nating tignan kung paano, kung nais natin iwasan itong sistema natin na 10 pesos per voter, 5 pesos sa partido, ay kung nais natin maiwasan yan, patibayin natin ang bahagi na ginagampanan ng ating mga partido sa mga halalan.
Yeah, you're absolutely correct. If any candidate does not have any political party behind him or her, whatever promises you make, that's just saliva. I don't know, because it's the political party which will make things happen. Diba?
Yes, ma'am. Absolutely agree.
And Secretary Gonzales was raising his hand for a reaction.
Well, yan nga po ang sinasabi ko Kailangan may batas tayo tungkol sa political parties. At hindi yung 2 partido lang. Pwede naman po maraming partido. At kung mag-uusap-usap, magkakaroon ng alliances. Sa parliamentary system, pagbubuo ng gobyerno, nabubuo ang gobyerno sa pamamagitan ng pag-uusap ng iba't ibang partido, malaki at maliit. Nang sa gayon, ang mga issue, ang mga programa na ipinaglalaban ng bawat sektor na isasali sa usapan sa loob ng parlamento. Kaya hindi po kailangan na alisin natin ang multi-party system. Pwede tayong maging matibay na ang political environment natin kahit maraming partido.
Thank you, Secretary Gonzales. And this was really a very interesting set of questions. And for now, we'll have to take a commercial break. But don't go away because we have our last 2 panelists asking questions from our candidates. So we'll be back here at the SMNI Presidential Debate 2022.